just about a minute away from the main engine burn. Can you explain what this is and how critical it is to the team?
Sure. We're waiting for the start of the burn. There's going to be a tone or two that we'll hear just in advance by a minute or two. We'll get a tone or two right at the start of the burn. And this will indicate that the burn is starting a 35-minute burn that'll put us into orbit in this kind of an attitude, burning in such a way that it slows our velocity. We're moving in the down direction, and so we're going to slow ourselves so that we're not moving as fast, and that will put us into orbit. We're also noticing from our Doppler signal, which you might have seen, that we're doing exactly the things that we expected that we would do. We performed the turn, we performed the spin up, and we're seeing those signals in the Doppler. We'll also see that signal very clearly in the Doppler once the burn starts, so we're waiting for that as well. Everything's looking good.
Standing by.
Systems, this is Nav.
Go ahead, Nav.
Yeah, we see the expected sharp shift upward in the Doppler residuals, indicating the main engine has started.
Copy that. That's good news. We're still awaiting confirmation of that independence.
The main engine burn has started, and that will continue for another 35 minutes, and that's the time they need to put this spacecraft into a 53-day orbit. That is the orbit that they are looking for. And while we wait, let's check in again with Tracy Drain over at Lockheed Martin.
Hello, Gay. Yes, we're all very excited to hear that the burn started on time. That's the whole reason why we're here tonight. So the team is really, really happy about that. But for now, we're going to take a minute, have a little bit of a breather, and have a conversation with Will Santiago, who is our thermal lead on the project. So, Will, why don't you explain to our audience what it is that a thermal engineer does on a mission like Juno?
As the Juno thermal engineer, we're primarily responsible for making sure all the temperatures are within the limits. So we have the electronics in the boat, for example, that want to be operating at room temperature to optimize the performance. At the same time, we have these instruments like GIRM that detects heat. It is looking at the auroras in the infrared spectrum. So it needs to be really cold to make the instrument the most sensitive possible. So we have all these computer models that allow us to predict the temperatures and also the power, the heated power that we use in the spacecraft.
Okay, and so when we talk about JOI, right, there's a lot of challenges associated with JOI. There are also thermal challenges associated with getting into orbit. Can you describe some of those for us?
So during JOI, which is happening right now, of course, we are at the JOI attitude. That means that the solar panels are pointed away from the sun. And that means that the temperatures of the solar panels drop very quickly, and we're seeing temperatures on the order of minus 300 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, colder than anything else here on Earth.
Absolutely. They were designed for that, so the engineers early on in development took that into account into the design. At the same time, JOI itself, we have the main engine burning right now, and that means we're seeing temperatures on the order of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, if not more. So JOI itself has all these extreme temperatures environment. It's one of the most unique phases of the mission for us with respect to all the thermal gradients that we see in the spacecraft.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Those have these louvers that are just like window blinds. They open and close based on the temperature. So when the temperature of the vault gets a little bit too warm, the louvers open and expose this radiator panel. It's not a hole, it's just a coating on the vault that allows us to reject the heat out to space. And once the temperature drops back down, there is the louvers kind of close automatically, and that's how we save heated power, because we use quite a bit of heated power on thermals.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So one of the things that Kristen mentioned earlier is that we don't have reaction wheels, that saves us on power. Thermal is one of the most power-hungry subsystems on board the spacecraft. You guys use what, like half?
We use over half of the power, so it was very important for the design early on to take into account all these considerations to make sure like we were tightly insulated. So you see a lot of thermal blankets around it, and we had to apply optical coatings to make sure that we don't reject too much heat into space.
That's right. Now, speaking of all the things we're doing in order to make sure things don't get too hot or don't get too cold on the spacecraft, we have to know for sure all that stuff's going to work before we launch the vehicle and it's on its way through cruise into JOI. So can you talk a little bit about what we did pre-launch in order to ensure the thermal subsystem was going to work?
All right, so the spacecraft was built here at our Lockheed Martin facilities in Denver, Colorado. Once it's all insulated and buttoned up, we actually transport it over to a building next door that has this large thermal chamber. It's called the Space Simulator Lab. And we take the spacecraft and we raise it up and we drop it into the chamber. And then we close the chamber and pull all the air out of the chamber, just like the vacuum of space. And we start flowing liquid nitrogen along the walls, temperatures on the order of minus 320 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's really cold. The chamber also, on the other hand, has lamps to simulate a solar load. And during a 3-week period, we go through hot and cold cycles on the spacecraft. We power all the instruments. We power the spacecraft components to make sure they're operating just like they would in space.
Okay. Now, I know we only have a little bit of time left, so the one thing I thought was cool you mentioned to me is that as our spacecraft is passing by the planet, we can actually sense the heat from the planet. Can you say just a few words about that?
So the Jupiter formation days, it's still hot. It's still cooling off from the days of solar system formation. So as we pass by the planet, we actually can detect temperature increases just because of the heat of Jupiter blasting the spacecraft for a short duration of time, but we see a little bit of heat pulse in the telemetry, and we expect to see that during JOI.
That's pretty cool. So we're going to let Will head back to his console and continue keeping an eye on the tones as they come in, and pass it back to you, Kay.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Will. And it's about 24 minutes past the hour. We're less than a half hour away from the end of the main engine burn. Mission Juno is a partnership. JPL manages the mission for Principal Investigator Scott Moulton of the Southwest Research Institute in San Antonio, Texas. The mission is part of the New Frontiers program, which is managed by NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. And the spacecraft was built by Lockheed Martin Space Systems in Denver, Colorado.
Super long orbit. We would just fly by Jupiter without this burn, which of course we don't want. After 35 minutes, we'll be in a 53-day orbit. And when the burn completes at 8:53 p.m., we'll immediately start to spin down to 2 RPM and turn back to sun. That'll happen by about 9:30 p.m., and that's obviously really critical for a solar power mission.
So right now it's on battery power because it has to turn away from the sun. So
That's right.
you want to get back to the sun as soon as you can.
Yeah, this is the only time in the mission where getting to the sun is second priority. The first priority right now is getting into orbit. And it'll keep firing the main engine until it's successful. And right now it looks like the main engine is just doing great.
You mentioned something at the news conference earlier today. You said this is not the first time you've fired that engine. This is the third time.
Yeah, it's a very well-designed mission. We fired the main engine twice, very successfully, back in 2012. And we know how to fire the main engine. It worked perfectly twice, but what's new here is we've never done it in Jupiter's environment. And the first peak of radiation that we expected to see has already passed us.
What's
and
the
the next
second?
one, it's after the main engine.
Okay.
So it's looking really good, but this is exactly how we designed the spacecraft and the sequence.
Hi, Stuart.
Hey, Gay, everything's going really well so far as we can add. Though we also verified with something called Doppler, the change in the frequency of the radio signal that we're still getting. It's just the regular carrier signal that doesn't have information encoded on it. And we can tell that that signal changed at the moment of the start of the burn and changed in its slope in such a way that the change in velocity was recorded, and we could tell that we're starting to record that change in velocity as we're now slowing ourselves down as we go into Jupiter's orbit in that 35-minute burn.
Which of course is rooted from Greek mythology. Juno was the wife and sister goddess of Jupiter, or in Greek it was Zeus, and the Greek name for Juno is Hera. So they were companions, and Zeus of course was the king of the gods, and she was the queen of the gods, Juno. But she was married and cared a lot about children and marriage and keeping everybody well behaved and sort of like a good mother would. And Zeus was sort of being naughty with some friends and doing things, and he saw Juno looking down at him or starting to come close to him, so he cast a veil of clouds around himself and his friends and tried to hide his naughtiness. But of course Juno was a fairly powerful god herself, And she saw enough that she said, okay, I'm suspicious, and kind of traveled down and used her powers to look right through the clouds and see the true nature of Jupiter and understand what he was really up to. And that's exactly what the Juno spacecraft does for us, is that it goes there with special instruments in a special orbit and uses its magical powers to see right through Jupiter's clouds and understand its true nature, which is holding these secrets for us about how the solar system formed and where we all came from.
But here it is. What do you see when you see that?
So what you're seeing actually is the first time that humans in any time in history have actually been able to see the motion of the heavenly bodies. I mean, this is how nature works. We've never actually been able to see it. This is what Galileo realized.
That was what Galileo saw in the 1600s.
Absolutely.
What are you looking most forward to as part of the science team?
Well, now I'm a little more relaxed than I was before the burn started. But and so I'm really looking forward to the science at this point. I'm starting to realize, okay, we're going into orbit. This is going to get started. It's fantastic. And I'm just so curious about the discoveries that we can make and learning about our beginnings and what can Jupiter tell us about how the solar system was made.
And managing expectations, because this was such a critical moment, we turned off all the science instruments right now. When can we expect some science coming back?
A couple of days from now, we'll turn the instruments back on. But our first orbit is 53 days long. And so we come back to Jupiter with all our eyes and ears open the next time. But that's not till the end of August. But we will have spectacular discoveries on that at that time.
There's Stuart Stevens and Tracy Drain in the control rooms at JPL and Lockheed Martin. Which was 52 minutes after the hour, and I see a display here, and the estimated orbit at this point is about 62 days, and it keeps counting down. The longer we burn, the shorter the orbital period. At this point, at this stage of the burn, it's about 61 days, so we're just counting down.
The tone for minimum burn timer. Almost there. We have the tone for burn cutoff on Delta B. Rod and film of Juno. Welcome to Jupiter.
Systems, this is Prop. Based on the from the moon, burn time was 2102 seconds, only differing 1 second off of the pre-burn predictions.
See that?
Welcome to Jupiter.